AITA for refusing to assist my parents financially because they only support my siblings. And never me. I'm 30M, the oldest of five, and my siblings are 28F, 27M, 25M, and 23F. Our parents were always generous in giving money when asked for it, except when it came to me. I was told I should learn to work hard. I was told I didn't need the new video game or toy. I was told earning money was the only way I'd ever have money, and that I hadn't earned money from them, but my siblings could get whatever they wanted. When I first graduated from college, I ended up struggling financially because where I went to work, the cost of apartments was so high. I asked my parents if they could help me out, and they said no. I ended up staying in a shelter for a few weeks and then rented a subpar apartment with a friend who found himself in a similar situation. They not only helped my siblings through college, which they didn't do for me, but they gave each of them lump sums after they graduated to help them get started in life. They also helped them out when asked over the years, especially during the COVID years. They didn't offer any money to help with mine and my wife's wedding. We didn't ask, but it stood out more when my sister, 28F, got engaged. And our parents mentioned money for all the weddings. Again, it was all except for mine. Now this is all caught up with them, and they are in a very tight spot financially. They're asking me for money, too. They told me they need mine and my wife's help and that we should do it because of how great they have been and that they never say no to any of us. I told them they never helped me with anything, that they preferred to see me struggling rather than help me out. They argued back that it never happened and that I could have asked if things were that bad. I showed them screenshots of texts where I had brought up the topic after asking them verbally. My parents dismissed it and then told me they're still my parents. And since I'm the most settled, I could afford to help them. I admitted that I could, but I didn't feel they had earned it. My parents called me ungrateful and said I should help them rather than see them lose everything. I told them to ask the kids. They did help. My siblings were also upset that I said no. They told me mom and dad don't deserve my bitterness. AITA. AITA for hating my bio sister. Am I the bad guy for telling my birth sister that she does not have the right to make demands? I, 27 female, was given up for adoption at birth by my birth parents. I was adopted into a family where my parents had already adopted my older sister Grace, 29 female, and 3 years after me, they also adopted my younger sister Cassie, 24 female. Details before I continue. Both my sisters were given their first names by their biological mothers and families. My parents kept the original first names for both because they felt it was important to allow them that connection to their biological families. I was not given a name by my birth parents. My parents also kept some items from my sister's birth families, but nothing was left for me. So I didn't have that growing up. Anyway, about 5 years ago, I learned that I had a birth sister, 25 female, who was 2 years younger than me. So I was 22, and she was 20 when she reached out. She had been told all about me from day one. She knew I existed. They called me her sister, and they made up this story that I was basically stolen by my parents, and they hadn't wanted to give me up. So when she reached out, she intended to shine a light on the truth and save me from these people. I told her that I wasn't interested in a relationship and that I didn't believe her parents' story. She ended up with a different story from her maternal grandparents, but chose to believe her parents anyway. I would believe her grandparents' version a lot more. She begged me to have a relationship with her. She said she always wanted her sister in her life and pleaded with me for days about not shutting out the relationship. I told her I really wasn't interested in the relationship she was seeking, and she said she would take anything, even very occasional DMs to each other. In the last year, she has been insufferable. She has brought up my parents changing my name, even though I was never given a name by hers, and I've told her this. She dismisses the fact that my parents didn't name 2 out of the 3 of us because they kept the original names and believes they chose not to do the same for me. She also made up this idea that her parents left me with a blanket, etc. I replied to her very infrequently because she gets on my nerves and I have told her this. Now I'm pretty much done with her. It started with me posting about a weekend trip with my sisters. Birth sister DM'd me saying that I really shouldn't say things like that, and I need to acknowledge her on social media as my real sister. She told me to edit my post right away, or better yet, create a new post acknowledging it. She sent me a bunch of short messages, and when I said no, she told me I chose other stolen kids over my real flesh and blood. This is when I really snapped, and I told her that she doesn't have the right to make demands, and continuing that she is not, in fact, my real sister. I told her I never wanted her in my life and only gave in because of her begging, and she still had the nerve to try and demand something from me. She accused me of being evil and cruel to her. All I did was speak the truth. So am I the bad guy? AITA for telling my niece the truth about her father against her mother's wishes. 38M here. Married with 2 sons, 8-year-old twins. I'm also the father figure to my 6-year-old niece. I love my little sister, 36F, and think she's a great mom, but recently we had a major disagreement about how she handles questions about my niece's father. Years ago, my little sister was in an abusive relationship with a man who put her in the ER twice. She continued to forgive him, and my family was terrified he'd eventually kill her. Luckily, my sister got pregnant, and this ended up being the push she needed to leave for good. She cooperated with a prosecutor, got a restraining order, and we haven't heard from the guy since. My sister has really gotten her life together and is totally committed to giving her little girl the best life possible. My niece is a cheerful and curious kid, and lately she's been asking questions about her father. At first, my sister said she didn't really know him. When my niece asked if they could find him, my sister said her dad died in the war. Now, my niece goes around telling anyone who will listen that her daddy died in the war and is a war hero. When my wife and I first heard this, we were shocked and appalled. I recently confronted my sister and asked why she'd tell a blatant lie to her daughter. My sister said my niece is too young to know the truth and that she doesn't want to hurt her self-esteem at such a young age by telling the kid her dad is a monster. I told my sister that lying to her is only going to make the situation worse in the long run because she'll think she wasn't told because she has something to be ashamed of. Plus, I'm worried she'll feel betrayed by the entire family for lying to her. I offered to speak to my niece for her and say that her dad wasn't always the nicest and her mommy left because she loved her more than anything. My sister insisted she's too young and told me I have no idea what she's gone through or how difficult it is to answer the kids' questions about HR father. I regrettably lost my temper and called her selfish for lying to her daughter because it's easier in the short term. I told her I couldn't be complicit in the lie anymore because I love my niece too much to be dishonest with her. This led to a massive fight, and I didn't see her or my niece for weeks. Anyways, I got a call from my sister on Friday saying my niece missed me, my wife, and my sons. My niece usually comes over for a sleepover at least once a week, and so my niece noticed and felt the absence. My sister asked if my niece could come over for a sleepover on Saturday, and I said yes and assured her I wouldn't say anything about her dad. My wife and I took the kids to dinner, and my niece once again started talking about her daddy, the war hero. I got up and went to the bathroom because I didn't want to feel complicit in lying to the kid. On the drive home, she brought it up again. I tried to change the subject by asking my niece about how soccer is going, but she kept going on and on and on about her dad. Before I could help myself, I blurted out your dad wasn't a hero. My niece insisted he was and asked why I thought that, and my wife giving me the death glare was the only thing that kept me quiet. My niece asked several times that night why I'd said that, and I told her it was something she needed to speak with her mother about. When my sister came this morning to pick my niece up, I was honest about what happened. She was furious to say the least. I've gotten several angry calls from my mother and our other sister. I know I shouldn't have said anything, but I also am deeply concerned about my niece. I'm also terrified I've now jeopardized my relationship with her, especially considering I'm the closest thing she has to a father figure. AITA for telling my sister she needs to clean up her house before giving birth, or the family will go for custody. I am 32F married to 37M. My sister is 28F married to 29M. Parents are in their late 50s. Brother is 30 married to 26. My sister is currently pregnant with her first child. The problem is she currently lives in a house with 4 dogs. 3 big dogs and 1 small. All shed a lot. 6 cats and 3 ducks. Yes, in the house. Her house smells absolutely terrible. I cannot go in there without wanting to gag. There is also laundry and clutter everywhere. There's no clean place to sit or walk. The floor is sticky. There are insects. It's so gross. She and her husband just got this house last year. I don't know how she made it this messy so quickly. Before this, they lived with her husband's mom. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I really cannot describe how absolutely filthy this house is right now. However, it's not so far gone that it can't be fixed. She's only around 12 weeks, so she has time to get it cleaned before the baby is born. Anyway, yesterday my parents went to her house. They live about an hour and a half away, so they don't visit often, and they got into an argument with my sister about her house. My dad basically gave her an ultimatum to get the house clean inside and out, or they will call child welfare when the baby is born and go for custody. My sister called me upset, and I told her I agree with our parents. Her house is filthy, and I am worried about the safety of my future niece or nephew in that house. Our brother feels the same way and will support us if she doesn't get it together. There are insects and animal messes on the floors. When the child is born, if the house is still dirty, we are going to do what we have to do to get that baby out of there until she gets her house cleaned. I am normally a let people do what they do kind of person, but that house is a health hazard, and I can't just sit by and let my niece or nephew live like that. I feel awful about it, but I'm with my parents on this particular ultimatum. However, the thought of calling child services on my sister just feels terrible, and I'm not sure if that makes me awful or not. I know my sister can be a good mom, but this whole situation is just gross, and a child shouldn't have to live like that. Are we the holes?